Scene start. Setting. The interior of the USC Aegis, a heavy class dreadnought. The ship is in battle damage mode. Red emergency lighting flickers rhythmically, casting long, jagged shadows across the corridors. The air is thick with the smell of ionized ozone, burnt circuitry, and the metallic tang of blood. Characters. John, 30s. Lean, observant, with a quiet intensity. He is a tactical analyst who prefers the shadows. Dan, 30s. A hulking powerhouse of a soldier. Broad-shared, scarred, and aggressive. He carries himself with a violent confidence. Commander Vance, the stern leader of the crew. Kira and Marcus, other crew members. INT. Quarters, Deck 4, night. The room is Spartan. Metal lockers, a narrow bunk, and a small hygiene station. The walls are vibrating slightly from the ship's struggling engines. Dan enters. It is covered in soot, grime, and the dried remnants of alien ichor. He is breathing heavily, his chest heaving under a shredded tactical vest. He looks exhausted, but his eyes are still wild with the adrenaline of the battle. He begins stripping. He throws his vest onto that floor with a heavy thud. He kicks off his boots. He is moving with a frantic, almost desperate energy. As he peels off his sweat-soaked undershirt, he pauses. He looks at the pile of clothes, the gear he wore for 18 hours of non-stop combat. INT. Corridor. Continuous. John stands in the shadows of the doorway, partially hidden by the flickering red light. It is watching. He shouldn't be here. This is Dan's private quarters. But the hatred between them is a living thing, a magnetic pull that forces John to seek out Dan's weaknesses. John watches as Dan enters a small shower stall. The sound of steaming water begins to hiss. INT. Quarters. Moments later the shower stops. The steam curls out of the stall as Dan steps out, dripping wet. He doesn't reach for a towel immediately. He stands there, naked and glistening under the dim lights, looking at the discarded heap of laundry. John stays frozen in the doorway, his breath shallow. He watches as Dan leans down. Dan picks up his own socks, thick, military-grade wool, saturated with the salt and musk of a day spent in a combat zone. Dan doesn't throw them in the wash. Instead, Dan closes his eyes. He presses the fabric deep into his nostrils and takes a long, slow, shuddering breath. He inhales deeply, his shoulders slumping as he savors the pungent, heavy scent of his own exertion. Then, he reaches for his underwear. He brings the fabric to his face, inhaling the concentrated musk of his groin and thighs, a look of intense, private satisfaction crossing his face. It is a moment of raw, primal intimacy with himself. John's eyes widen. A smirk, cold and predatory, touches his lips. John, a low, dangerous whisper. I didn't know you were into that, Dan. Dan freezes. He snaps his head toward the door, his face instantly flushing a deep, humiliated crimson. He drops the clothes as if they were hot coals. Dan, roaring, what the fuck are you doing in here? Dan lunges forward, crossing the room in 2 strides. He grabs John by the collar of his uniform, slamming him hard against the metal bulkhead. The impact echoes through the small room. Dan's face is inches from John's, his eyes blazing with rage and shame. Dan, you spying on me, you little creep. You think this is funny? John, unfazed, breathless, I think it's fascinating. The big, bad soldier, sniffing his own filth to calm his nerves. Dan, spatting the word, shut up. You're a fucking faggot for even watching. I'll kill you. I'll snap your fucking neck right here and tell Vance you tripped during the breach. Dan's grip tightens, cutting off John's air. But John isn't fighting back. It is looking at Dan with a strange, calculating hunger. John, choking out the words, how much is your pride worth, Dan? Dan pauses, confused. He doesn't let go, but the intensity of the violence shifts into curiosity. Dan, what the hell are you talking about? John reaches into his pocket with a slow movement and pulls out a high-denomination credit chip. He holds it up between them. The gold plating of the chip glints under the red emergency lights. John, 10,000 credits. Just for the sacks. Dan's eyes lock onto that chip. In the wake of the battle, resources are scarce. Pay is delayed. The ship is falling apart. Dan, sneering, you think you can buy me? You think I'm some whore? John, I think you're a man with a secret. And I think you're a man who knows how to make a profit. 10,000 credits to let me do exactly what you were just doing. Dan stares at John. The silence in the room is heavy, thick with the smell of steam and sweat. The hatred is still there, but it's mutating. The power dynamic is shifting. Dan realizes that John isn't mocking him, John is offering himself up. Dan slowly releases a collar. He doesn't step back, though. He looms over John, his physical presence overwhelming. Dan, voice low and menacing, you want to sniff my gear? You want to be my little dog? John, a slight shiver in his voice. Yes. Dan, a cruel smile forming. 10,000 isn't enough. 20. Angie, do it on your knees. John doesn't hesitate. He reaches into his pocket and produces a second chip. He places them on the small metal table. John done. Dan looks down at the credits, then back at John. He reaches down and picks up the socks he had dropped. He doesn't hand them over. Instead, he holds them just out of reach, teasingly. Dan down. Now. John sinks to his knees on the cold, vibrating floor. He looks up at Dan, his expression a mix of anticipation and submission. Dan drops the socks onto John's face. Dan, get to work, faggot. John grabs the fabric and presses it to his face, inhaling the pungent, salty scent of Dan's sweat. He moans softly, a sound of total surrender. Dan watches him, his expression shifting from disgust to a dark, intoxicating sense of power. He realizes he doesn't just hate John anymore, he enjoys owning him. Dan, coldly, now the underwear. But if you make a sound that I don't like, I'm taking the money and breaking your jaw. INT. Mess hall. 3 days later, the atmosphere is tense. The crew is eating synthetic protein mash in silence. The red lights have been replaced by a harsh, sterile white. John is sitting at the end of the table. He looks different. It is quieter, his shoulders slightly slumped, his eyes java toward Dan, who is sitting in the center of the group, surrounded by the other soldiers. Dan is lounging back in his chair, his boots up on the table. He looks smug, radiating a new kind of authority. Marcus, to Dan, I'm telling you, the starboard thrusters are still leaking. Vance is losing his mind. Dan, ignoring Marcus, looking at John. Hey, John. Come here. The table goes silent. Every eye turns to John. John stands up immediately. He doesn't look at the others. He only looks at Dan. He walks over and stops beside Dan's chair. Dan, loudly, for the whole room to hear, I've had a long shift in the engine room. I'm feeling grimy. Dan reaches down and slowly peels off one of his heavy combat boots, then pulls off the thick, gray sock. He holds it up. The scent hits the air sharp, musky, and oppressive. Dan, with a smirk, our tactical analyst here has a very specific set of skills. Don't you, John? The crew looks confused. Kira frowns. Kira, what are you talking about, Dan? Dan, laughing. John's found a new vocation. He's the ship's official sanitation specialist. Or more accurately, the sniffer. The room erupts in a mixture of laughter and shocked silence. Marcus, laughing. No way. You're shitting me. Dan, to John, commanding, show them. John doesn't hesitate. He leans down and takes the sock from Dan's hand. He closes his eyes and takes a deep, audible breath, inhaling the scent of Dan's foot with a look of genuine devotion. The mess hall goes wild. Some are cheering, some are gagging, but the power shift is absolute. John is no longer the respected analyst. It is the crew's plaything, the designated submissive. Commander Vance, walking in, voice booming. What is this racket? The room goes quiet. Vance looks at John, who is still holding Dan's sock. He looks at Dan, who is grinning like a shark. Vance, John. What the hell are you doing with that? Dan, standing up, confident, just keeping morale up, Commander. John's volunteered to take care of the heavy lifting for the squad. He's our designated gear sniffer. Vance stares at John. He sees the look in John's eyes, the total absence of resistance, the hunger for the degradation. Vance is a hard man, but he recognizes a hierarchy when he sees one. He doesn't punish them. Instead, a slow, cruel smile spreads across his face. Vance, is that so? John, quietly, looking up. Yes, Commander. Vance, looking at his own boots. Well, I've been in these boots for 3 days straight. If you're taking applications, John, I think I might have some work for you. The crew roars with laughter. Dan leans back, crossing his arms, watching as John moves toward the commander. Dan, whispering to John, get in line, dog. You're not done with me yet. John kneels before Vance, the scent of the entire crew now a looming promise of further submission. He is no longer an enemy. He is an asset. A tool. A pet. As he inhales the scent of the commander's boot, John realizes that the hatred he once felt for Dan has been replaced by something far more potent. The blissful, crushing weight of total ownership. Scene end.